and we do not agree, what we're doing is saying that Socrates may personify philosophy and may be the symbol of philosophy if we can stick in that last missing piece. But if not, he's just the personification of it, but not ideally, and therefore not a symbol. So Alcibiades says, I've never met a man like Socrates, he says. And he lists 4 great virtues. He lists endurance, and he gives many examples of Socrates' endurance, especially in the cold weather. He walks in with a military formation into the snow country without any shoes, walks barefooted, and he's able to endure those extremes. Right? And he only wears a very thin cloak during the entire winter. We would call that thumos in Tibetan philosophy. He also talks about Socrates' great courage, and he gives examples of Socrates in the battlefield. And he also talks, therefore, about Socrates' cool-headedness. Keeps us cool. Or sound mind. Sometimes it's called temperance, but sound mind and cool-headedness is much better. And then he mentions wisdom. Now, why is that important? Because he gives examples of endurance. He gives examples of courage. He gives examples of cool-headedness. He gives no example of wisdom. Why?
Beyond words.
He does.
Beyond Alcibiades, is that?
Yes. If he were to talk knowledgeably about wisdom, then it would say something about Hesad. And if Socrates is characterizing him as someone who hasn't yet reached understanding, he would not have any insight into the nature of wisdom. Therefore, right, he can talk about these 3, but not this. But therefore, in typical Socratic fashion, there must be something in the dialogue that could deserve that name if you know what it is. If you know what it is. Alcibiades didn't, or he would have called it wisdom. So we need 2 things, therefore. We need to know what wisdom is, and we have to see whether we can put in this great Salinos figure. Could I use your text, please? Could you pass your text for a second? Thank you, thank you. So, let me do it for you. Notice, now you have to give a name for this. Once there was a most dreadful frost, and no one would go out of doors, or if he did, he put on an awful lot of things and swathed his legs and wrapped up his feet in felt and sheepskin. But this man went out in that weather, wearing only such a cloak as he used to wear before, and unshod, marched over the ice more easily than others did with boots on. Soldiers looked back at him, thinking he despised them. And there's a quote, so much for that, but here's a doughty deed the strong man did once on that expedition, and it is worth hearing. He got some notion into his head, and there he stood on one spot from dawn, thinking. And when it did not come out, he would not give in, but still stood pondering. It was already midday. People noticed it and wondered, and said to one another that Socrates had been standing thinking about something ever since dawn. At last, when evening came, some of the Ionians, after dinner, it was summertime then, brought out their pallets and slept near in the cool, and watched him from time to time to see if he would stand all night. He did stand until it was dawn. And the sun rose, and he offered a prayer to the sun, and he walked away. What's that? What state of mind is that?
Ecstasy? Ecstasy.
That's some kind of very profound state of mind where you can meditate in one spot for 24 hours and not move. If that is, could that be a samadhi?
Something like
If that's a mahasamadhi, then that is...
But it could also be a trance.
Could also be a trance.
Yeah.
But Alcibiades couldn't judge it.
No.
You didn't know?
So we are left with the question. What name can we give it? And now let's go to the Salinos, all right? Now, Alcibiades now ends his whole speech on Socrates, and he believes he has the truth on Socrates beyond all other men. One could quote many other things in praise of Socrates, wonderful things. Of his other habits, one might perhaps say much the same about another man. And yet it is his not being like any other man in the world, ancient or modern, that is worthy of all wonder. Men like Achilles might be found. One might take, for example, Brasides and others. Or again, men like Pericles, such as Nestor and Antenor. And they are more besides. And so we might go on with our comparisons. But as for this man, so odd, both the man and his talk, none could ever be found to come near him, neither modern nor ancient, unless he's compared to no man at all, but to the Salinoses and Satyrs, to which I have compared to him and his talk. Now, here we go. Notice the ideas. For there is indeed something which I left out when I began, that even his talk is very like the opening of the Salinoses. When you agree to listen to the talk of Socrates, it might seem at first to be nothing but absurdity. Such words and phrases are wrapped outside it like the height of a boisterous satyr. Packasses and smiths and shoemakers and tanners. That's what he talks about. And he seems to be always saying the same things in the same words, so that any ignorant and foolish man would laugh at him. But when they are opened out, and you get inside them, you will find his words, first full of sense as no others are, next most divine and containing the finest images of excellence, and reaching furthest, in fact, reaching to everything which it profits a man to study who is to become noble and good. So in the end of the speech, he goes back to the Salinos and tries to point out the singularity of this man in respect to what he's been describing. He gives us this puzzle, and it's left to us to solve it. Now, if he does, if you do, then look here. We have our great Diotima, his teacher. We have Socrates as her student. Then we have Socrates becoming the teacher, and he teaches Agathon. But look here. We also have then